Hey, 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 welcome, Free Thinking Ministries, folks. Today we are looking at the theology, or I guess philosophy, behind some of Trump's most recent comments and the decisions and his decisions and where we might differ. We're going to get into this. I am joined by Dr. Tim Stratton here today. After 2 weeks, we're together once again. We are together and ready to fight, aren't we? We're ready to, well, I don't know if we're going to fight, but yeah, so we have maybe some slight disagreements on Trump and the basis of some of the statements that he's made. I don't think it's going to be fisticuffs. I don't think it's going to be knockdown, drag out. It is not going to be the type of debate that some people around these parts witnessed in the last week or so. I won't mention it any further than that. But Dr. Tim Stratton, welcome back from Utah. How are you doing today?
Well, thanks, Josh. Just got back from a great Maven immersive experience trip that I led in Utah with a group of teenagers from Southern California, and it was a blast. We got to share the gospel multiple times throughout the week and got into apologetics and philosophy and just deep systematic theology as well with so many folks there. And as you know, Greg Koch likes to say he likes to put stones in shoes, so that when they walk away from that conversation, they got something to think about. Well, I like to say that we put rocks in their socks. And I think that's worse than stones in your shoe. I mean, if you got rocks in your socks, you really got a problem. So anyway, we put a lot of rocks in socks and made people think and saw people move closer to truth. So I'm all fired up after that and really looking forward to some.
Yes, and after going to California, where it is not negative 15 degrees, here you are back in Nebraska, where it is. And
I was in Utah, but
you're in Utah, Utah. I heard California for some reason.
Yeah, well, the group was from California, but it was much warmer in Utah than it is here, and it was even snowing in Utah. It was like it was in a snow globe, but then the next day I could walk around in a t-shirt, and then I come back to Nebraska and it's like 50 below or something. It's crazy. So I got the beanie on today. I'm freezing.
There you go. So. There you go. Well, I think we settled on 4 specific topics concerning Trump. We thought about maybe doing a 5th, but if we have time and there's interest, we might be able to do that, but we're probably going to be going up against the clock. But before we get into it, those of you who are watching, make sure you like and share this video. Subscribe to the channel on YouTube if you haven't already. Like us on Facebook and Instagram. Make sure you head there. We're also available on X as well, so make sure to follow us on X at FreeThinkMin on X. You can follow Tim at TSXpress, TSXpress, and then Josh at Josh R. Klein. Mine's easier.
It's one of my biggest regrets in life is my Twitter handle.
If that's one of your biggest regrets in life, you're doing fine. So what if you'll do us a favor, subscribe to the channel, share this, that'd be great. We are going to get into it. We've got a lot to cover, a lot of ground to cover. And one of the reasons we're doing this is not because we're a political channel. We're not. We have talked about politics, but remember our vision statement is reasoning together by applying sound logic or logic and sound theology in all aspects of life, right? So
close enough.
Yeah, close enough. I should memorize that better.
I think it's our mission statement.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
Yes. So mission statement.
Reasoning together based on Isaiah 1:18 by applying logic and sound theology to all aspects of life.
To all aspects of life. Okay. Yeah, I got it. I just called it a vision. It's the same. It's the same thing. Corporate America just made it 2 different things. All right. So. Okay, so Trump has been making a lot of headlines lately. Let's start with one that we're going to agree on, shall we? Let's make sure we get all. If you want to stay for the fireworks, stay for the fireworks. I don't think there's going to be fireworks. I'm trying not to oversell this. But you and I texted, and the biggest one. So there's 4 topics. One is going to be Paula White. The second one's going to be Trump's executive order on IVF. The third one is going to be, let's see if I can remember. Oh, his statement. That's the big one. Mm-hmm. Who saves the country breaks no law. You had a Facebook post about that. We're going to talk about why you're wrong. And then I'm just kidding. I'm just throwing that out there. And then we're going to talk about Gaza because everyone wants to talk about Gaza still, right? Trump, obviously a lot of controversy. Even if we're trying to keep up with it, these are things we've figured out. yesterday, and then yesterday he comes out and says, "Long live the king," according to his name, and then he also says that Ukraine started the war. So it's just so much to talk about.
Right. And one thing that you and I have been clear on, like we think Trump has done some awesome stuff in his first term, and and even so far in his second term. But he often says really stupid things. That's never changed. I think you and I would stand together saying he says a lot of stupid things and does many great things. But he's definitely not perfect in that aspect either. And when he says something stupid or does something stupid, you and I are going to call him out on it. And when he's worthy of praise, we're gonna sing his praises and say, "Good job, keep it up." So we want to call balls and strikes. We think the former administration just struck out horribly on just about every issue, and so we think that this is improvement. But that doesn't mean it's perfect. So let's have some fun and talking about good Trump, bad Trump.
Yes. And these have theological import. And the first one that has theological import is
which is why we're discussing it, because we're a theology-based channel. So we're staying in our lane of theology. And because these topics swerve into our lane, we feel an obligation to address them. So
absolutely. And Trump's theology is part of that, right? So Trump has some sort of theology and philosophy. It's hard to pin it down or what it is, but we're going to do our best to kind of pin it down through some of these things today. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is this White House Faith Office. This is from 13 days ago. Pastor Paula White Kane will return to the White House as a special government employee and senior advisor of the newly created White House Faith Office. How do we feel about this, Tim?
Well, when I first heard that White had been appointed to this position, I thought it was James White, James White, who I had debated. I'm like, no way. But I was actually kind of excited because while I disagree with James White's Calvinism and exhaustive divine determinism, he's dead wrong there. I do think that James White would be a fantastic White House advisor, head of the what's it called again? This office.
It's kind of a dystopian right. White House Faith Office.
No, yeah. So I think James White would be much better than Paula White here. I actually do think James White does quite well most of the time when it comes to the intersection of theology and politics. But yeah, he'd be much better than Paula White. So I was quite disheartened when I found out that it was Paula White who was going to be the spiritual advisor and the one in charge of the Faith Office.
Okay, so
Faith Office. Yeah.
Let's treat these as two separate issues real quick. The White House Faith Office itself, do you have a problem with that? The White House having a faith office?
I don't know if I like it. I haven't really thought about that specifically. So I like the concept. What I've heard so far is that this person is going to make sure that Christians are not being treated unfairly or being persecuted in any way, as we have been recently, and that we really do have the freedom of religion when it doesn't, while I like to say, while it doesn't violate the law above the law, and we're going to get into that more soon. But I like the idea of having an office focused on that. I don't know if I like calling it the Faith Office. Yeah. What do you think?
Yeah. Well, this is where I'm like, I'm not entirely sure. I'm not a huge pluralistic society guy. I think that yes, Christianity is we're not going to get into this debate now, but Christianity is privileged or was privileged at the founding of this nation, and so it ought to have influence over the way our government works. Orthodox Christianity should, but like to me, it's kind of like, well, we also want to make sure that other religions aren't being discriminated against us, as long as they're adhering to the freedoms outlined in our founding documents, right? Yeah, so like obviously if somebody wanted to have a pagan child sacrifice religion,
Right.
let's not give them
Yeah.
let's not give them equal
That's where we
protection.
say no. The United States does not have freedom of religion just across the board. Contrary to popular opinion, because we don't let the pagan religion or the Satanist or whoever it might be sacrifice virgins on the altar. That would violate the virgins' objective and unalienable human rights that we get from God. So I say that any religion that is compatible with America's theological and philosophical foundations ought to have the freedom to worship as they would like here in these borders. But yeah, that's to your point. Anything you'd add to that?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm going to add this comment here. Pastor Nick, who we both know, says, "Why not an office dedicated to combating religious discrimination in general?"
Yeah, I'd be fine with that. I'd like to run that actually.
Yeah. This is Tim submitting his application.
Right, that's right. No, I'd be fine with that. Let's call it that instead of the faith office or whatever. And like I said, as long as a religion does not violate America's philosophical or theological foundations, then one ought to be free to practice his religion here. So that's why the Judeo-Christian values work so well together. That's why Mormons, for that matter, make great neighbors, is because we share the same, or at least so much of. I mean, there's so much overlap there, and in each of those religions or ideas or worldviews they're not just compatible with America's theological and philosophical foundations, but they really support them. So definitely, I think Christianity makes the best sense of America's theological foundations and philosophical foundations, but it's completely compatible with it. So he wanted the freedom of religion for Sharia law and to incorporate Sharia law. Well, he can't do that. That violates the Constitution, and the way women are treated, for example, violates objective and unalienable human rights. So Sharia law is not compatible. It's incompatible with America.
So the faith office thing, and then we'll get into Paula White. I think that will be a short discussion because we'll definitely agree that the faith office thing, to me, like there's the wall of separation between church and state. It's not technically in the First Amendment. Okay. Let's throw all that out there. I know the history. Okay. We don't have to upload the comments on all of that, but there is this separation of church and state, because the church is supposed to be protected from the state. That's the whole point of it. It's not that the state's supposed to be protected from the church. It's that the church is supposed to be protected from the state. And my concern about a faith office is actually that it could turn into the church being, even though it's supposed to eliminate Christian discrimination, it could turn into something where the state is having undue influence over the church. And so I don't like that. That. So I would rather not, probably. I would rather they're just like Nick said, there be more of like hey, let's make sure the government is not interfering in anybody's worship so long as it follows the parameters that you laid out there, Tim. So if there is going to be this office, which apparently there is going to be. So if there is going to be, should Paula White be the one that is doing it, Tim?
No, like I said, I would like that job, but no, and I would give it to James White too. But no, it shouldn't be Paula White. I was disheartened when I found out that she was going to be the one. I mean, first of all, like I said, I was hoping to have that position. I mean, don't you think it would be better to have a PhD theologian who used to be a pastor? I mean, don't you think that would be a better fit for that position? I mean, come on. President Trump, why'd you pass me over? That's not,
well,
I had your back, man.
Yeah. and to that point, I think you want somebody with not the history that Paula White has.
Yeah, right.
I'm gonna pull up one article here. So I'm not even talking about heresy, okay? Because I think she's heretical. I don't think she fits in mainstream because she's prosperity gospel through and through.
Well, that's what I was going to talk about too. Yeah. That'd be the main reason why I'm opposed to this, is especially her prosperity gospel. So go ahead.
Yeah. So I'm going to share my screen here. This is from the election in 2020. Okay. And it says, the Lord says it's done. White House spiritual advisor Paula White prays for angels from Africa to cement Trump's re-election bid. And this is where she basically says and predicts as a prophecy that Trump is going to win the presidency in 2020. So this goes to like, there's a lot of things I like about Donald Trump, but his tendency to platform people who are being kind of sycophantic of him is one of the things that I dislike.
Right.
And this is one of those things. Like Paula White said that he won the 2020 election, so he's going to put her in the faith position because obviously she has special access to God because he won the 2020 election. And I'm like, okay, or
2024.
What?
You mean 2024?
No, 2020. This is from 2020.
Oh, so they're saying that he actually won the 2020 election.
Well, this is before she prophesied
that he would win.
That he would win. The Lord says it's done. He's going to win.
So he didn't. So that's a false prophet.
That's a false prophecy. So,
right.
so
saying, well, he really technically won it, but it was cheated out of it. Is that what they're saying?
So that's what she would say, right? And I think that's why he likes her, right? So it's to me, it's like, oh, this is just bad all the way around. I don't like almost any of it, and it's not good. So we call balls and strikes there. I would call a strike.
Strike.
A swing and a miss.
Definitely. The prosperity gospel. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah.
That's probably, at least that's what I know most of Paula White. Basically that's a belief system that asserts that faith and I think often financial contributions, usually to the one who's making this claim, financial contributions will lead, like guarantee maybe personal wealth and well-being. Maybe they don't go as far as to guarantee it, but it's like it should happen.
Yeah, some will guarantee it. I mean, some will say if you don't give to this ministry. I mean, Benny Hinn has said that. If even if it's your last penny, if you don't give to this ministry, then you're not unlocking the promises that God has, the riches that God has in store for you.
Josh, maybe we need to try that here with Free Thinking Ministry.
Yes. With that in mind, we are a nonprofit that you can donate.
I mean, it worked for Benny Hinn. I mean, come on.
Yeah, spiritual manipulation and abuse tends to work, and that's what Paula White does. And so it's bad. It's bad theologically. I think it's just bad. And so I think we as Christians shouldn't celebrate this. I'm going to go that far to say we should say this is not good, this is bad. We as Christians should not celebrate the establishment of a faith office, and especially not Paula White being in a position of authority or whatever to Donald Trump, right?
Yeah. Just with the whole idea of the prosperity gospel. I mean, the prosperity gospel is true in a sense. On the other side of death, it's true.
Yes.
But it's not guaranteed on this side of death. And we know in Scripture, Jesus says, in this world, you will have trouble. And Paul also talks about how these afflictions prepare us for eternity in 2 Corinthians 4:17, right? We're not always going to be flourishing. In fact, we're going to suffer at times. It doesn't mean we try to find suffering. We just know that it's part of life. And we know how Christ followers, we know how they were treated, how his apostles were treated, and how many awesome men and women of God have suffered for their beliefs throughout history. So if one's theology is that if one has faith and gives a lot of their money to the church or to some minister, and then they say, well, now you're guaranteed to flourish. Well, I guarantee you that's a false teacher and you should have nothing to do with them. And so I really wish that Trump would not have picked her. Now, Trump is no theologian. Everybody has a philosophy and a theology, as you noted. But he's not a trained theologian. And so we shouldn't expect him to have good judgment there, but it was still bad judgment. He shouldn't have picked her.
Yeah. Well, and the good judgment is to admit that. That's the good judgment, is to recognize that you're not theologically astute, and to not even try to establish that. If you're going to have a faith office, have someone you trust that is theologically astute. Do something with it. But I think it speaks to just kind of he has a kind of a bankrupt theology of whatever sounds good to me is kind of his theology, right? And I'm not saying he's not a Christian. I have supreme doubts that he is a genuine Christian. He claims some sort of Christianity. There's a lot of moral things that he's done policy wise, but personally, he's never been one of a ton of stand up public moral character. Now,
Well, I'll say this.
there has been like things that he's done that have been moral. Like I've seen him
Oh, yeah.
pay off for people's houses and stuff like that.
Right.
But
Well, even atheists can do good things, but as
yes,
we know from Isaiah, our good works are like dirty rags. That means they do nothing to get us saved.
absolutely.
But side note, drives me nuts when I talk to some Christians who say, "Oh, it's impossible for a non-saved person to do anything good." I'm like, then why do they say your good works are like dirty rags? Yeah, you can do good things, and I love being around atheists who are good to me because they're being good, objectively good to me. But their good works are like dirty rags, and it's not doing anything for eternity. But and one more thing: if Trump is saved, you and I talked to somebody yesterday who knows Trump a little bit, and we won't share any names right now, but he told, he's kind of he's a strong Christian, and he wouldn't say that he's not saved. He says he doesn't know for sure, but he's seen growth. And I would say this: if Trump is saved, he's a baby Christian. And if I was making decisions when I was a baby Christian like this, I would have made a ton of mistakes. So I got to be fair and not judge him as a PhD theologian, because that's not what he is. I will say this: J.D. Vance is a much better theologian than Paula White. I'm sure. Vance is a good theologian. I'm not going to agree with him on everything, obviously, but he's good. He takes it seriously. He's a trained philosopher, has a degree in philosophy.
He's at least good. It can be a relative term, right? He's at least a serious.
He's serious. He's educated. He's.
But isn't Donald Trump being like a baby Christian, isn't it even more dangerous than that Paula White is around him and advising him? If that's the case, that's even more dangerous, right?
Oh yeah, I would say so. Which is again why I'm thankful for JD. I think JD's theological perspectives on things will be considered above Paula White. So because he's the vice president, and so that's why I'm very thankful that he's there. But
I don't know if I agree with that. I don't know if I think that Trump will trust JD's theology over Paula's.
I don't know.
I'm not sure. But anyway,
see this: Vance would make a better case. He would make a better case reasoning for things. Paula.
That's true. That's true. Yeah. All right. So our next thing that Trump, it was an executive order on IVF, in vitro fertilization. If you don't know what that is, basically people who are having issues conceiving children can go and get embryos frozen and implanted into the uterus so that they can have a child. So he expanded access to IVF. And I think we need to talk about this because we have been very specific, you and I, to say that Trump is the most pro-life president of our lifetimes. Very specific. He put the judges on the Supreme Court that eliminated Roe v. Wade. He has been hands-off on states. He pardoned pro-life protesters that were jailed by the Biden administration. Right. So in that sense, he is very pro-life.
He's very pro-life when it comes to the abortion issue in particular, but IVF is slightly different.
Yes. And I think IVF is confusing for people because it seems like a pro-life position.
Well, it does. It really does. And I'll play devil's advocate a little bit here and try to go for it. Try to make a case to consider. Let me preface that by saying, if push comes to shove, I've got to say I am opposed to the way IVF is typically handled. So this is a tough one. Just the other day, I was having breakfast with a well-known pastor in my area, and this guy's an awesome man of God. And we were talking about the IVF debate, and then he pulled out his phone. And he showed me this little picture. And he goes, "Check out my granddaughter." And I said, "What a beautiful little baby." And then he said, "Well, she's a product of IVF." And I was like, "Oh wow!" I said that little baby is tough to argue with or to argue against. Right now, listen, that's not a concession. I was just kind of floored. Like, I felt like, okay, the convert, kind of like he just dropped the mic on me. Because then I was almost in a position where I said, oh, she doesn't deserve to live. Now, again, like I alluded to, I think it's safe to say that you and I are not against IVF in principle, right?
Yeah, if it's handled a certain way.
It's handled a certain way. And let me say this. IVF is completely different than abortion in the fact that the intent of abortion is to end a human life, while the intent of IVF is to bring forth life. That's the intent. So right off the bat, I'd say if there's going to be a worse one here, it's abortion because of the intent. The guilty mind, mens rea is what that's called in the Latin. There's a guilty mind behind abortion, while I don't think there is, at least not always, or at least not necessarily with the IVF thing. So the problem here is that there's often collateral damage that comes along with this objective good of bringing forth life. Now, so these individual human lives are either, or many of them are either frozen. I mean, like Han Solo in carbonite, right? Forever. There's no getting out of it. Or they're discarded and killed. And so both of those options are horrible. And this raises questions about the doctrine of double effect. But before we get into that, what would you add?
So so I was teaching a class on faith and culture recently here at a church in Omaha. And so IVF is something that we have to talk about, because I was talking about IVF in this class, and one of the guys said basically the same thing. Hey, I have twin grandkids that were birthed through IVF. Are you telling me that that's wrong? So I think that there's an important distinction to be made. It is not to say that those children shouldn't have existed, right? Every child is precious. So regardless of how they're brought into existence, we praise God for new life. But that is not to say the way they were brought into existence was moral. I use this example. A child conceived in rape is still a child worthy of life. But that does not make me thankful or even neutral towards rape. Like, the rape was wrong.
Yeah, two things can be true at once.
Yes. So the same thing can be said for IVF, depending on how it's done. Two things can be true at once. The economical way, because of economics, the way we do IVF is we freeze multiple embryos and we plant one at a time, and then once one takes, once one is implanted and starts to grow, then the rest are usually discarded. And that's just and that's where the problem is.
Because we believe that life starts at conception.
Yeah. So there's two problems.
We have no reason to believe that. Sorry.
There's two problems in my view with IVF. One is the discarding problem. Like 100%, that's an issue. One's a discarding problem. The other one is a little bit more philosophical. So I understand that there's maybe some nuance here, but with IVF, we tend to treat then having children as commodities that we're able to purchase. Like, let's go now. People could say adoption's the same way, that sort of thing. But what this is we're going to design the way to have a child. And so it does play into the commoditization of childbearing. I'm not saying that means IVF is off limits, but I think we do need to be aware of that, because things like false wombs and stuff like that are coming into existence that I think, like a fake womb that you just kind of implant an embryo in and so then the woman doesn't have to experience pregnancy, to me removes the humanity from the situation. Like, that is morally objective. And so the commoditization of childbearing, I think, needs to be fought. And so I don't like that we're expanding access to IVF, because with expansion, we're not also curbing some of the practices that make it economical. It's expensive to do IVF. And so what you do is you freeze multiple embryos so you don't have to keep going back to do it, and then you discard them. And then there are people that can't have kids, like homosexual couples that might use IVF and surrogacy at the same time.
Mhm.
And that is the commoditization of children.
Yeah.
And I think that that is morally objectionable.
Yeah.
And so we need to have guardrails around that. I think I've told you, I'm sorry, I've talked a lot. I think I told you that IVF, in principle, I'm not against using technology so that we
Right.
can have children. There are fertilization drugs as well,
Yeah.
that you might accidentally have quadruplets because you took these fertilization drugs, and all of a
Right.
sudden
Right.
you have quadruplets.
Yeah.
So I'm not against that, but using it ethically. And right now we aren't doing IVF ethically, and so
Mhm.
expanding access to it, I think, is morally wrong.
Yeah. I don't really have anything to add to that. I would agree with you. I guess I would just, I mentioned the doctrine of double effect and how some people are, and I can see their case. I just don't know if it passes. I've seen some really bad objections to IVF, like procreation shouldn't involve a third party. Like it's bad when a doctor comes in to help something happen. I'm not persuaded by that at all. I mean, I say, okay, well, what if it's the IVF doctor doing that to his own wife? So there's not a third party involved. Is it all of a sudden good or acceptable? So yeah, I mean, so let me talk about the doctrine of double effect.
Okay.
So for an action according to this principle, and I think it's right, to be morally permissible, it must meet at least three criteria. The first one is that an action itself must be morally good or neutral. That is, the act being performed cannot be inherently evil. So now we look at IVF. Is the act of impregnating or taking a fertilized egg and implanting it wrong? I don't see anything wrong with that alone. Now there's nuances here where we say, okay,
Yeah.
but is it wrong to implant a whole bunch that you are, if they don't take, you're going to discard?
Yeah.
Then that's wrong. So that's where right away we have to examine this. But just by taking, in principle, I don't see anything wrong with it. Now, second, the bad effect must not be intended. So that is, the harmful consequences must not be the goal of the action, but merely a side effect. And I think that counts here, because people who are going, unlike abortion, right, the bad effect is intended. Whereas in IVF, they just want to have a little baby. They want to bring life into the world, right? So, and then, okay, well, that means not all of them are going to make it, but at least we've got life. And so that's where I see their strongest case here. But the third key criteria here is that the good effect must not be achieved through the bad effect. And so again, so the end does not justify the means here, and we're going to talk about that later. But the negative consequence cannot be the means of bringing about the good outcome. And so I think there's a debate. Well, then there's one more, that there must be a proportionate reason for allowing the bad effect. And I think, I mean, here's the deal. There is a debate on each one of those. I mean, people are thinking this through. I do think at the end of the day, as IVF is practiced, it is objectively wrong.
Yeah. I would say as it's practiced, it. Yeah,
go ahead.
I was just going to say, as it's practiced, I think it actually fails 3 of those 4.
Yeah, I think it definitely could. I would tend to agree. But I am rooting for scientists to get to the point where the science is so good, the technology is so good that they can implant one and they don't have to, or that they can fertilize one, implant that one, and you don't have to worry about the rest. I mean, that's just what I'm hoping for. I think that's a good goal. I don't know if it's feasible or not, but you know what? I don't know anything about that technology as far as the details go. But if people want to learn more about double effect, I would encourage the doctrine of double effect. I mean, it's used to, like, for example, justify or just war theory, like, you know, bombing a military target, even if it results in unintended civilian casualties, because the primary goal is destroying the enemy target. which wants to kill your neighbors or kill others.
But that would be more akin to like the mom has cancer, you do cancer treatment, and
there's medical ethics, there's war ethics, there's using lethal force to stop the aggressor. The goal, if you're a concealed carry guy and you pull your pistol to stop somebody who's trying to murder your wife, well, the goal is either self-protection or to protect your wife, not killing the attacker. And I would actually say that even for good police officers, the goal, if they have to use their weapon, isn't to kill the guy, it's to stop him. And then the negative consequence, is he died, right? So we're not going to get into the, all the depth and detail of the doctrine of double effect right now, but I just want to encourage people to study that on their own. Maybe we'll talk about it more in the future.
Yeah, so I kind of want to close it with this. If people want to know why the concern is the concern, IVF process, 15 children on average are created per one live birth.
Say IVF. That again. Say
15 embryos are created on average for one live birth. 15-to-1 ratio.
Wow.
Now the ratio is not necessarily like how much discarded embryo, like how many discarded embryos are okay compared to one is not necessarily the issue, because even if it's 2-to-1, I still think or 1-to-1, I still think it's morally objectionable. But it just goes to show you we're not talking about, they and that's on average, right? 15-to-1 on average. And so that's a lot, which is why I think the way we're doing it currently, we do need to talk about it more, and we don't talk about it because it's very new, right? It's very new, and we want people to have babies. We're staring down the barrel of population collapse if they don't. I think that's what Trump is doing. He's saying we need to incentivize people to have babies because our population is collapsing. But I think this is actually right now the way we're doing IVF. It's an immoral means to accomplish that end. So,
why don't they just? You should only be willing, it seems to me, to make this moral. Like if you're fertilizing 15 eggs, right? To one life that's born.
Yeah.
I know the chances go down, but you should only be willing to say, all right, let's do 3 instead of 15. All right, 3 is better than 0. All right, so let's do 3, and I am committed to bringing all 3 of these to birth.
As I'm able, like if your body miscarries, it miscarries. But
it seems to me that if and maybe you're like, hey, I'm willing to bring 5. Well, just only do what you're willing to. Don't kill anybody. So right, so that's, I don't know. You and I aren't against it in principle, but it needs to be handled differently. And so, and again, I would say, at least what it's got going for it is that one's intent is to bring life. And so that's a good intent. Whereas abortion, the intent is to kill. And so abortion is worse in that sense. But we do have to have these tough conversations. And we probably all know people who have used IVF and now have beautiful children. And so we have to speak.
And there's, and what I told the couple, what I told the grandpa that came to me was like, I want to have grace with people that didn't know.
Right.
That didn't know that this is kind of in immoral means. Because I have met couples who have done it, and they have done it the way that you're describing. They have said, well, we only did 3. We're planning on doing only 3 of them. And they've done it that way. And they intentionally did it that way, which is fine and good. The problem to me is that it's perpetuating the system that's not doing it that way.
Right. So now what Trump signed is to make it more affordable, as far as I understand. So if he would make it more affordable to do the model that you and I would think would be acceptable, then that turns out to be an awesome executive order. But as it stands right now, it's not.
Yeah, and the medical industry is not seemingly wanting to move that direction. You have to actually pursue that as the person pursuing IVF, or they're going to do it the way that even at the cheaper rate. So I'm against this executive order for that reason. I understand why he did it. I do think that and here's the thing. The other thing that people don't realize is there are actually really good fertilization drugs on the market that will increase your chances to have pregnancy like 2 or 3-fold.
Yeah.
It's not like IVF is almost foolproof in the way that they do it. It's so those things aren't foolproof, but I say if you have somebody struggling with infertility that's considering IVF, point them those routes first. And then adoption's always an opportunity too, to pursue.
Yeah, and I get it. I mean, for some reason, my wife and I couldn't have our own kids. So Ethan is. So it must be me because I met Tia when Ethan was 2 years old, and we got married when he was 3. And so I'm blessed and honored. The greatest blessing of my life was to raise Ethan, and the fact that he calls me dad. There's nothing more special to me in the world. But I know the pain as well, because we wanted to have multiple kids, and we just couldn't. Yeah, so I understand what it is that people are going through. I really do. We have to be able to speak truth and love, and have tons of grace at the same time. Nobody usually blames me for not being truthful, but this is a tough topic, and if you're out there and you've had children through IVF, we would just tell you that they're not a mistake. They are every bit in the image of God as anybody else, and you should I celebrate their life. But if you're looking into this option, we just want to encourage you to look at these other options that Josh mentioned. And if you are going to go through with it, just be thinking about, what's the right terminology to fertilize the amount of eggs that you're willing
to implant.
Plant and bring to life, right? Or not bring to life, but to bring to birth, because they are. So, that's, I think, what my last word on that. What would you want to say?
The only thing I'll say is, actually, if you want to look more into that, Lila Rose with Live Action has really good resources on fertility drugs and what IVF is like. So check that out, Live Action, I think .com. Just Google it, Live Action, Lila Rose. She's great. She's pro-life person. All right. We're going to get into our most controversial part. I don't know if it's the most controversial, but it is to me. So we're going to get into it. But before we get into that, let's make sure people know that this video is brought to you by Just Free Thinking Ministries. We are a nonprofit, right? And so we actually do need your help to continue to thrive and grow. And we got a lot of fun stuff happening right now behind the scenes that God is doing with Free Thinking Ministries. So if you want to be a part of that, go to freethinkingministries.com, freethinkingministries.com/donate, and be a part of that. You can sign up for our email list on the website as well, so you can kind of get the behind the scenes on some of that stuff. So without further ado, you made a Facebook post the other day, and then I posted a disagreement on it, and the world shook.
I mean, the fabric of the universe tore slightly.
Yes.
It was almost like saying a disagreement between the members of the Trinity.
I won't go that far. That's
that's
not something I'll do. Okay, so
people treated it like it was that.
Yeah. So Trump recently, on a Truth Social, said, now make sure I'm getting the wording right. He said, a man who saves his country violates no law. Is that correct? Man who saves his country violates no law. I took umbrage with this because even if Trump has specific reasons for it, and I think he does, and we'll get into those in a little bit, even if he has specific reasons for it, I feel like it's a silly thing to say. And it's a trolling thing to say. Like, he's just looking for people's responses, reactions, because he knows people think he wants to be a dictator. And so I thought it was unwise and uncouth and not cool. And so I would actually just denounce that he said it. You, on the other hand, wanted to use a more charitable
Well, hold on.
reading of it.
Hold on. I would not disagree that it was unwise
Oh,
or
okay.
that he was trolling. I was just saying, hey, it's actually true if you consider the complete context.
Okay.
So that's, and I did think there was some uncharitableness. Now, yeah, so I can agree. I think two things can be true at once. I can say, well, his statement is actually true. Probably shouldn't have said it. But let's give the guy some charity here. So, I could, well, let me read what I posted in response, because I saw so many people saying that this is fascism. And of course the usual voices were saying that, but I was surprised to see some other voices say that.
But you know why they said it, right? Like it's,
yeah,
because it's attributed to Napoleon Bonaparte,
right?
Who is
and Hitler was trying to save Germany.
Yeah.
So let's put things into context here, and this is why. So just here's what I said. Let me read this here. I posted this. I took a screenshot of his tweet or Truth or whatever it was, Truth Social.
Yeah.
And I said, think about it this way: he who saves his neighbor from objective evil, foreign or domestic, violates no law. And then I quoted Galatians 5:14. For the whole law is fulfilled in one word: you shall love your neighbor as yourself. And then I said, bottom line, the law above the law always trumps, no pun intended, a nation's laws. That's why the Nazis were convicted at Nuremberg, right? The Nazis didn't violate German law, but they violated the law above the law. And then I said, but fortunately, loving neighbors and saving them from objective evil, foreign or domestic, is consistent with both the law of Christ and the philosophical foundations of our nation, not to mention the oath the president takes. And then I added an edit later that day, the next day. I said, in this post, I'm responding to the litany of assertions across social media that Trump's words are evidence of fascism, and that this proves that Trump believes that the ends justify the means. These are things that Trump did not say, but so many are jumping to conclusions and being anything but charitable. I'm pointing out that at least most of the time, Trump's words here are objectively true. Thus, the current freakout of the masses is unjustified. So that's what I posted.
Okay.
Had tons of response and interaction on there. But, in the same way that I would say, he who saves his wife from a rapist violates no law, right? He who saves his children from kidnappers violates no law. He who saves his Jewish neighbors from Nazis violates no law. And he who saves his neighbors from objective evil, period, violates no law. Now, Josh, you and I wrote a long and detailed article called A Moral Obligation to Vote for an Immoral Candidate during the election. And the gist of this article is a survey of the great objective evil advanced by, Biden, Harris, and the modern day Democrat machine as a whole. And thus, we as Christians who've been blessed with a little bit of power here, one voice and a vote, ought to use that power to protect and save our neighbors from the great objective evil advanced from the left. Now, we know that Trump is opposed to objective evil, at least what we're concerned about. He's opposed to Marxism. He's opposed to Planned Parenthood. He's opposed to open borders, letting terrorists across unvetted. He's opposed to there's so much. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. The transgender mania and mutilation of confused, the sexual mutilation of confused kids. He's against the objective evil of letting men compete in women's sports. I mean, he is against all of these objective evils. And so he is clear that is what he is trying to save his neighbors from. So bottom line, in his neighbors and who he is responsible for is this country, the Americans. And that's primary. And so I'll just say bottom line, if protecting and saving your neighbors from objective evil approximates to the law of Christ, which is the law above the law, then it does not violate any objective law above the law. And by the way, final thing, and then I'll give the floor to you. This is why the moral argument for God's existence works. And it's also why the Nazis were properly condemned and convicted at Nuremberg. So go ahead, Josh.
Okay, so there's now philosophically, I don't disagree with anything that you just said. I need to say that right at the outset. So here's the question, though. Would it be within Trump's purview then? Let's say he wants a national abortion ban. And you and I both agree that would be a moral thing to do. Would it be within his legal rights as president to seek to claim dictatorship so that he could instill a national abortion ban? Get rid of the Constitution, get rid of all of that, just so, you know what? No more abortion.
Okay. Well, I mean, so if you were president and you had the power to end abortion, to end the murder of babies, would you not do it?
Okay, so what we're saying then, if I say, well, yeah, you should. So we're not saying use all the power that you have in the executive branch. I'm saying overreach and reach for more power so that you can.
Like, yeah, I'm just saying,
there's a difference.
If you have the power to save the lives of those babies and you don't, then I think significant questions are raised.
Yeah, I agree. But I'm saying right now he doesn't have that power, right?
Okay, well, fine. Then what's the issue?
The issue is this. The issue is this. If he chooses to violate what are supposed to be the structures of power around himself in the executive branch, dissolve the Constitution so that he can do that.
Well, he's not asking to do that.
No, I don't
think he could.
Tim, this is a hypothetical. I'm not saying he's going to do it. This is a hypothetical.
Okay, hypothetical. Thought experiment.
This is a thought experiment.
Okay.
I'm not arguing that Trump is going to light the Constitution on fire. I'm saying, you know, the law above the law. If he hypothetically chose to, you know what, this has gone on long enough. I'm going to burn the Constitution. I am now dictator. No more elections, so that I can eliminate abortion. Does that ends justify that means? Like, does he violate no law then?
Yeah, I'm not going to go that far.
And see, I think, I think that's people's problem. That's what people think he's saying. I don't think he's saying that. I don't think he's saying that. I don't think he's saying that. But him saying it was in response to these judges that keep striking down his executive orders. There was one. And I do too. I think they're actually doing the thing that people would accuse Trump of doing. Right. If he wants to be totalitarian. They're overreaching their authority by saying no, kids should be given drugs, transgender drugs, even though the executive has put a kibosh on that. There was a judge that came out and said, no, I'm going to put a halt to that. Kids still need access to this quote unquote health care. So you and I are in lockstep agreements of that. So I think his statement of wanting to defy the courts in that sense, I think that's where that statement was coming from. And he's frustrated because the courts are getting in the way of executive orders that he doesn't think are unconstitutional. And now he even said in an interview, I think recently, well, we're going to have to sue and we're going to have to take it to the courts.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Yeah. So I don't think he's saying he's going to defy the courts.
No, I don't either.
But I think what he's saying is that he wishes he wishes he could. He's gonna do what he can.
He might wish he could, but I don't even think he's saying that he wishes he could. I mean, that's maybe splitting hairs. But I mean, my whole point was, if one saves his neighbor from objective evil, then one violates no law. And so you start with your neighbor, or start with your kids if you want to, and then move to your wife, then move to your neighbor. And
Ordo amoris.
Right. Yeah, there you go. We talked about that. And you keep going on. Well, where does it magically end? Especially, you know, so if I save my neighborhood from objective evil, I've violated no law. If I save my county, if I save my state, if I save the Midwest, if I save the entire nation from objective evil, it seems like I violated no law. Where does it magically? Where's that line? It's like when you can start counting.
Yeah, but
and then where's the line to infinity? Oh, where
yeah.
I can't count anymore.
But you kind of also admitted there is kind of a line there, because you wouldn't agree that you should, in order to do that, at least I don't think, you wouldn't agree that you should establish yourself as dictator in order to accomplish all of those things, right?
I would just say if Trump had the power to end abortion, or any other president, I think he should do it. If he doesn't have the power to do it, and I don't think you can just say, "Oh, no, I'm a dictator now." That's not going to fly. It doesn't work.
No, it's not. Michael Scott.
Right? I know
Michael Scott saying, "I declare bankruptcy."
I declare dictatorship. Yeah. I'm like, yeah. Look what he did. We're dictatorship now.
Well, dissolve the Congress. Yeah.
That's right. See you guys. That was easy. So yeah, I think. Hey, man. I'm being way too loud here. I don't know.
Okay.
But no, thought experiments are fun. I'm just saying, bottom line, if one saves your neighbor from objective evil, one has violated no law. If one saves all of his neighbors from objective evil, one has violated no law, period. That's where I always want to end it. And I'm like, can we at least everybody agree on that? And I think you've at least agreed on that much. And
in principle, but there is this, like, if I decide to be the totalitarian dictator, now I have started to violate, and I guess this is where it gets to the case of, all of a sudden, when you can carry that reasoning to the point where all of a sudden you become the law instead of God, and you've become the totalitarian dictator, right? So I think that's what people are reacting towards, is they think, okay, this is Trump's whatever, and I don't think that that's what he's doing, but that's why I don't want distractions from this presidency. Like, stop trolling and just do the work. Like, you've done great for the first month.
Right. Oh yeah,
you've done awesome stuff.
I think you've got a debate coming up on this topic, don't you?
Hopefully, yeah, sometime soon. I still haven't received back word on it, so I can't announce anything.
But
so there's been
can you at least share what the resolution of the debate would be?
Yeah, I think. Well, I don't think we've even agreed on that necessarily, but what has been posited is, can a Christian support the first month of the Trump presidency, or can a Christian support Trump, considering the first month of his presidency, or something like that?
Yeah, something along those lines.
So all of that. But this also goes to the other thing that we're going to touch on real quick, is he then came out because they ended the New York congestion traffic toll. Did you see that? And
no.
Okay. So they did that, and the New York mayor's all hopping mad about it, that sort of thing. And then so he tweets, he tweets. What is even that?
Oh, that's the platform.
He posts on X, congratulations, New York, you should thank me, something like that. And then he puts, long live King Trump. He puts that at the end.
I heard you say right before we went live that he said something about long live the king. I was like, okay,
long live.
Where'd that go?
Yeah, I'm gonna see if I can find it. So, and this is the type of stuff where I'm like,
that's total trolling, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
King Trump.
Yeah. So okay, this is what he said.
After 5,000.
So this is from the White House Twitter account. Okay.
No way.
It's from let me share it. And this is why I'm like, guys, come on. Like, okay. I don't know if you can see this. Can you guys see that? Let me zoom in. Okay.
I can see it. Yeah.
Congestion pricing is dead. Manhattan and all of New York is saved. Long live the king. Oh. President Donald Trump. And then this. Okay. Long live the king. Okay.
I mean, you also have to take into account his sense of humor and what is, and he says so much that he doesn't mean. He's joking quite a bit and trolling quite a bit. And so with me, what I've done,
when people say he's a pathological liar, a lot of times they're mistaking the fact that he is he talks in hyperbole.
Oh, I've never seen anybody be more hyperbolic than Trump.
Yeah.
If you don't know that, then you're not going to interpret him correctly. It's like doing hermeneutics. You have to get to know who you're dealing with before you can interpret them properly. So what I do, I judge Trump on his policies first. And I did that in his, he had to win me over. I didn't know if I was going to vote for him in 2016 until the morning of. I didn't know if I was going to vote for him or write in somebody, a third party. I knew I wasn't going to vote for Hillary. But then he won me over during his first administration. And then seeing how he was attacked and just treated so unfairly in the press and in his 4 years not being in the White House really won me over even more. And then I listened to what he said was going to be policy, and I believed him because he kept his word last time. And now over the first month of his presidency, I'm very happy. Has he been perfect? No. Has it been one of the best first months of any presidency I've ever seen in my lifetime? Yes. And but I judge him on his policies and what he actually gets done, not on what he says, not on what he tweets, not on his trolls. We can say bad Trump to that, but then what he gets done, we could say that's awesome.
Yes. Well, to me, it's like I don't even think that he okay, let me rewind in my head. To me, it's like, can you just get out of your way? Like, please, like you're doing a lot of good stuff. Get out of your way. You don't need to say "Long live the king." Okay, you're really leaning it. It's stupid. You're really laying it on thick. And so, so I've seen some of these comments that are coming through, and we're going to get into a policy thing in just our last 10 minutes here. But didn't you?
Juan, did you hear me earlier? Have you been here?
I think he missed. I think he missed the first part. I'm going to give him grace. Say you must have missed when Tim and I said that Trump was doing bad stuff with the faith office. That Trump is Trump's executive order on this whole episode has been fairly critical of Trump. Now this particular point that we're talking about here, you're defending him more than I am. Now I tend to think he doesn't actually know that he's quoting something that's attributed to Napoleon Bonaparte. When you said, I think to me, well, I think JD Vance is like helping coach him on philosophy. That might be the case, but I think JD Vance would have said, no, don't say that. Like, don't say the Napoleon Bonaparte thing.
Well, I'm
say something else.
I mean, I don't think that JD is looking over Trump's tweets before he or whatever he's doing, his social media posts. I'm just saying that I think JD has will have an influence on him. And so thank you, Juan. Look, I'm saying two things are true at once. It can be unwise. It was unwise what he said, right? And I can see why people would take it that way, right? But I am also saying, hey, can we be critical thinkers here and analytics and look at this philosophically and say, is it also, or it's true? If you consider what he considers to be evil, we know as Christians what he considers to be evil and what we need to be saved from is objectively evil. And so if that's the case, with all the context taken, what he said was true, even if it was unwise. That's my position.
And to that case, you have to trust it. Like you would have to actually trust that he knows that. And most of the people upset with him wouldn't trust that.
I don't even know if he knows. I don't even know if he knows what objective evil means. Right? Yeah. I'm just saying what he is opposed to. We know what he's opposed to. We know what he's fighting. And we can say what he's fighting, we know, we have knowledge that what he is against is objectively evil. So that's why I can cheer for him. Just as I was, I compare Elon Musk to Tony Stark and Iron Man. Tony Stark's no Christian in the Avengers movies.
Absolutely not.
Here for him to fight evil, to protect your neighbors and your family. Of course you would.
Yeah.
Of course you would.
And okay, we're not going to belabor this anymore. We've gone through it, but just to say also though, as we kind of bookend this, that while that's the case, there is that's such an open-ended phrase to say, especially considering that it has been used by people with nefarious intents and nefarious means in the past to exert their authority to do what they will.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why, like you and I would both say, we'll end with this. It is an unwise thing to say. I don't think he should have said it. I know why he did. I think he said it out of frustration and wanting to troll people. One of the things I'll say is, if you want Trump to stop saying some of those things, and nobody will ever do this because everyone's broken, stop reacting so viscerally to some of them. All of a sudden, the tweet, it's like the bull, if you just ignore the bully, he'll go away. If you just ignore the troll, he'll go away. I have somebody like that on my Facebook wall that constantly will poke. Like, I just ignore him. I don't interact at all.
I've had to do that with several people.
Yeah,
I'm like,
so some of this, but I do understand that there is some concern that and I even had a conversation with a friend of mine who is very conservative that thinks Trump is going to try to run for a third term. I said, I don't see it. I don't see it at all. So we'll see. Maybe he's right. Maybe I'm right. All right.
Hey,
let's
if he tries to do that, you and I will oppose it.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
I know people maybe won't believe that in the comments, but 100%. We'll say it right now. You can play it back. If he tries to run, in fact, if he tries to grab power away from Congress in a way that is not constitutional, I want to be clear, because I think seizing some of the executive power back to the executive branch from Congress is actually constitutional. That's neither here nor there. That is not constitutional. I will stand up and I will shout with the rest of them that he is doing something authoritarian. So,
I'll have your back. I'm right there with you.
Okay. All right.
So,
we're
our audience. You can take that to the bank, and you have our words on YouTube forever, and you can hold us accountable.
Clip it, use it, whatever. All right. We were going to talk about Gaza. Do we want to go there? It's been an hour and 10 minutes.
I don't really have a lot of time left, but why don't you do a flyover?
What a horrible use of words. Come on. All right. So this is a long time ago. It's not news to anyone, but Trump said that he would. He would seize control of Gaza, that the U.S. is going to seize control of Gaza. And I never listened to Ben Shapiro's episode on it. I was going to do that today, and I never did. But I am actually opposed to that if it means what it seems to mean to say. Well, first of all, okay, I got to say this. I'm done talking about January 6th, Darren. I'm done. Okay.
What are you talking about? Oh, I see.
Yeah. It's over. It's been 4 years. It's been 5 years.
Wow.
All right. So moving on. He said that the U.S. is going to seize control of Gaza and rebuild it, right? And relocate people and rebuild it.
Mm-hmm.
And I am actually probably this is the Trump policy, besides the IVF thing, that I am most opposed to. I don't think the U.S. should do that. To be clear, this is not because I'm saying anything about a genocide in Gaza. I don't think that's the case. It's not because I don't support Israel. It's actually the opposite. I think we should say to Israel, hey, we'll support you. Do what you need to do to rebuild Gaza.
Yeah.
We're out. That's my position.
Right. And I would totally agree. I don't think there needs to be, and I don't think Trump has any, I thought I heard Vance say that.
Yeah, I looked for it and I didn't hear it. So
maybe I'm wrong. I could be wrong about that, but I thought I heard Vance say that no, we would not have American boots on the ground there. But maybe I dreamt it.
It's a wishful thinking.
But yeah, but Shapiro has said that he does not think that we need to put American boots on the ground to get that done. I do think that Israel does have the right at this point, because I think the Palestinian people have lost the right to make any demands at this point about the Gaza Strip. As Barack Obama said famously or infamously, elections have consequences. Well, Palestinian people voted Hamas into power. Hamas is in some aspects objectively more evil than the Nazis, because after all, at least the Nazis knew what they were doing ought to be hidden, but Hamas,
Yeah.
rapes
Hamas glorifies it. Yep.
and
Brags
kills
about it.
babies and gets it on video and brags about it. Yeah. So, and Hamas continues to enjoy majority support, huge majority support in the Gaza Strip. So with that said, Israel has the right, because of love of their neighbors, to of Israeli citizens.
Yep.
Do I think? I mean, look, there's nowhere to live right now in the Gaza Strip. It's leveled, and any remaining buildings that are still standing wouldn't pass any codes here in America. It needs to be completely leveled. So the question is, well, what do you do with the Palestinians right now? And I think you have to move them somewhere just until you get it rebuilt, and then I think you vet who you let back in to see if are you going to try to kill us still or not.
Yeah,
that's what I would do at face. With my first, that's my first reaction. Maybe I'm missing something.
Yeah.
What would
post-war rebuilding is always messy of any war. So, like one of the things you said, Hamas is worse than the Nazis. I totally agree with what you said there. And what did we have to do in Germany? We had to do denazification of Germany, right? Like we had to actually denazify Germany. What did we have to do in Japan? We had to de-imperialize Japan in a lot of ways after World War II. So I get all of that. It's messy. That's kind of what's going to happen in Gaza. That's not a genocide. It's trying to make a place less extreme. One of the problems that Israel had was they pulled out of Gaza in 2005 and kind of lit the firecracker. They should have never pulled out of Gaza in 2005. Right. When they did, they trusted the world stage that said, you know what, if you just give them their own place, they'll leave you alone. Obviously, that never happened. Yeah. What I'm opposed to is the USA taking the lead in any sort of rebuild effort in Gaza. Support whatever
lead. Yeah, I mean, you're support,
financial, political, or military lead.
Okay, I definitely would be opposed to the military lead.
Yeah, I think Israel is in charge of Israel, and that's and I'm not an isolationist. You know that. You and I are. I'm not an isolationist necessarily. Israel is in charge. Yeah, Israel is in charge of Israel. Let them insist that they be in charge of that. Say, hey, we'll support you. We'll make sure that the UN Security Council doesn't do ridiculous things to you. We'll make sure the ICC has no power over you guys, because the International Criminal Court is a hive of scum and villainy, as we would say in Star Wars. And so support them that way, but being the leaders in rebuilding, in providing the finances, providing military support, I'm 100 against. And by leaders financially, I don't mean sure, maybe there's some financial means that we can help with, but it doesn't mean we're not the ones dictating what it's going to be used for, and we're not the ones that are telling Israel what to do with the funds, but we're allowing Israel to use those to rebuild Gaza. That's what I would say.
Yeah.
So
I think that's good. I don't see anything to disagree with there.
Okay, so I win. I'm just kidding. Let it be known that the only debate Tim has ever seated was this one. I'm just kidding. Just kidding. So anyway, that is our show for today. Hey, for more on these and more topics, go to freethinkingministries.com. Tim has a couple articles out on freethinkingministries.com on determinism, and you've got an academic journal article coming out with Phil Kahlberg as well soon. So check that out. We will be talking about that article and more in the future. It won't just be Trump, I promise. And then I have a long-awaited review of Jordan Peterson's book, We Who Wrestle with God, coming out tomorrow, hopefully tomorrow morning. I got to polish it up a little bit as well. So freethinkingministries.com, go there and look at those things. Anything you want to say in part?
Well, I think you should release the review on the website, that's written in blog form. But I think it'd be cool for you to do a review on YouTube after it's out for a while. What do you think?
Yeah, let's do that. And I'll get Jordan Peterson on the show.
That'd be great. Okay. Well, I mean, we know people who know him, so let's see what we can do.
Yeah, well, yeah, I'm sure. And I can do my Jordan Peterson impression to Jordan Peterson. It'll be fantastic.
Why don't you just dress up like Jordan Peterson and talk like him, and then I'll interview you, and people will think that we actually have him on the show.
There you go. All right. Let's get to a few comments. Let's get to a few comments here.
Right. I clicked on this.
Okay, that's the one I was going to click on.
Okay.
Are you going to review Dr. Craig's upcoming Systematic Philosophical Theology Part 1?
Yes.
We need to get it first.
Mine. I've ordered it. I don't have it yet. I see other people getting it. And I'm like, what's up with that? I'm a Reasonable Faith chapter director. I should have had one first. But
text Tyson.
Yeah, I think it's Tyson's fault. But yeah, we've already discussed these. Yeah, we are going to have reviews of his book on Free Thinking Ministries, so stay tuned for that.
Yep. And thank you, Juan. You know what? We're totally awesome. Okay with disagreeing. Yeah. That's awesome. Thanks for watching. And we love you too.
That is really cool. That's what we need in this world right now. I mean, is people disagreeing with each other, because we're all just trying, right? Yeah. I'm trying to think through this stuff. He's trying to do the same thing. And you're like, okay, we're not seeing eye to eye. We're talking past each other. Maybe it's me. Maybe I'm missing something. Maybe he's missing something. Maybe we're both missing something. But at the end of the day, when we could say, I respect you and love you, Juan, and he feels the same way about me, that's the body of Christ right there. We're not fighting each other, but we're loving each other. And that's awesome. I'm very thankful for that, Juan. Thank you.
Absolutely. 100%. Hey guys, this has been great. We really appreciate all of the liveliness in the chat. We're sorry that we didn't get to some of the chats. I saw, Nick, you had some great stuff on IVF, so people read through the chats again. Let us know what you think in the comments below. And as we always say here at Free Thinking Ministries, stay reasonable.